That New Year's dinner was supposed to be about fresh beginnings, laughter, and hope. The table was full, glasses clinking, people smiling for tradition more than joy. I walked in carrying the quiet optimism that maybe this year would be different. Maybe this year, I wouldn't feel like the family joke. But before the food even cooled, my brother made sure I remembered my place. He laughed first. Then he joked. Then he mocked. He spoke about my failures as if they were entertainment, turning my struggles into punchlines everyone could digest easily. Each sentence landed heavier than the last. And the room responded the way it always did, awkward smiles, nervous laughter, eyes looking everywhere except at me. No one stopped him. No one defended me. And for a moment I considered doing what I had always done before, lower my head and let it pass. Inside, though, something shifted. I realized that every year I promised myself I'd be stronger. Yet here I was again, shrinking to keep others comfortable. I felt the familiar heat in my chest, the urge to respond with anger, to embarrass him back. But I didn't. I stayed quiet. Not because I was weak, but because I was finally listening to myself. When it was time for the New Year's toast, someone casually handed me the glass. Maybe they thought it would be funny. Maybe they didn't think at all. I stood up, feeling every eye in the room settle on me, expecting something small, forgettable, or safe. My brother leaned back in his chair smirking, confident that nothing I said could matter. I began calmly. I thanked everyone for being there, for sharing another year together. My voice didn't shake. That surprised even me. Then I spoke about time, how it reveals character, how it exposes patterns, how it teaches us who celebrates others, and who feeds on putting them down. The room grew quieter, not because I raised my voice, but because I didn't. I talked about growth, about how some people measure success by trophies and titles, while others measure it by resilience, by surviving years they never talk about. I spoke about how easy it is to laugh at someone's past when you've never walked in their fear, their doubt, their loneliness. Every word was honest, not cruel. Direct, not aggressive. Then I said the part that changed everything. I said that this year, I was done apologizing for being on my own path, that I no longer needed approval from people who only felt tall when others were made small. I wished everyone a new year filled not just with success, but with humility, the kind that reminds us we're all one mistake away from needing the same grace we deny others. I raised my glass and ended it there. No insults. No names. No drama. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was heavy. Real. My brother didn't laugh. He didn't look at me. For the first time, he had nothing to say. Around the table, people shifted uncomfortably, suddenly aware of their own role in what had just been exposed. I sat back down, my heart racing, but my shoulders lighter than they had been in years. That toast didn't change my brother overnight. It didn't magically fix the family. But it changed me. It taught me that dignity doesn't need permission and strength doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes the most powerful response is clarity spoken without fear. As the night went on, a few people avoided my eyes. A few nodded quietly in respect. And one or two thanked me later for saying what they never had the courage to say themselves. I realized then that my voice had always mattered. I just hadn't believed it. That new year didn't start with fireworks or grand resolutions. It started with me finally standing in my truth, and that was enough to silence the room. Public humiliation has a way of shrinking a person in seconds, even when it's wrapped in laughter and passed off as just a joke. When my brother mocked me at that New Year's dinner, it wasn't the first time, and that was what made it hurt the most. It carried the weight of every past moment, where I had been talked over, laughed at, or quietly dismissed. Humiliation in front of family cuts deeper, because these are the people who know your history, your weak points, and your unfinished chapters. When those details are turned into entertainment, it feels like your entire identity is being reduced to a failure that everyone is allowed to comment on. In moments like that, your mind starts racing faster than your heart. You replay every mistake you've ever made, every risk that didn't pay off, every time you fell behind while others surged ahead. The table may be full of people, but inside, you feel completely alone. You smile not because you agree, but because you're trying to survive the moment with whatever dignity you can gather. The laughter around you becomes distorted, almost distant, as if you're watching yourself from the outside, wondering how you ended up here again. What makes public humiliation especially damaging is how easily it's normalized. People excuse it as honesty, humor, or tough love. They tell you not to be sensitive, to learn how to take a joke, to grow thicker skin. But what they don't see is how those moments stack on top of each other over time. One comment may seem small, but years of them create cracks in your confidence. You begin to question your worth, your decisions, and even your right to speak up. You start editing yourself, staying quieter, safer, smaller, so you don't give anyone new material to use against you. Family humiliation is its own kind of wound because it's public and personal at the same time. Strangers can insult you and walk away, but family members sit across from you, share food with you, celebrate holidays with you, all while holding on to the power to hurt you in ways outsiders never could. When my brother laughed at me, he wasn't just making fun of who I was in that moment. He was reopening old scars, reminding me of the version of myself I had worked so hard to outgrow. The most painful part wasn't even his words. It was the silence that followed them. No one interrupted him. No one said my name in defense. That quiet agreement from the room made the humiliation feel official, as if it had been approved by everyone present. In that silence, you start to believe the story being told about you. You begin to wonder if this is all people see when they look at you, and whether your efforts, your growth, and your unseen battles mean anything at all. Yet humiliation also has a strange way of revealing truth. It forces you to confront how you've been allowing yourself to be treated. Sitting there, listening to my brother's jokes, I realized that part of the pain came from familiarity. I had accepted this role without questioning it, hoping that patience would someday earn respect. But patience without boundaries doesn't inspire change, it invites repetition. The dinner table wasn't just a place of embarrassment, it was a mirror showing me how often I had chosen silence over self-respect. That realization didn't erase the hurt, but it transformed it. The sting of public humiliation became a wake-up call rather than a sentence. It showed me that feeling small in public doesn't mean you are small, it means someone else is standing on a fragile sense of superiority. And while humiliation can leave deep wounds, it can also become the moment you decide that you will no longer participate in your own diminishing, no matter who is watching. Silence is often misunderstood. To the people watching, it looks like surrender, like acceptance, like proof that the words being thrown at you must be true. When I stayed quiet at that New Year's dinner, many probably assumed I had nothing to say, that I didn't know how to defend myself. My brother certainly thought so. He leaned into my silence with confidence, mistaking it for weakness, believing that the absence of resistance meant victory. But what no one could see was the storm of thoughts forming behind that quiet exterior. In moments of humiliation, silence is rarely empty. It is filled with restraint, calculation, and survival. Speaking too quickly would have meant reacting from pain, and pain tends to betray you. It pushes you toward sharp words that may feel satisfying in the moment, but leave you exposed later. I had learned, over years of being underestimated, that immediate reactions often hand control to the very person trying to diminish you. So I stayed quiet, not because I had no voice, but because I was choosing when to use it. There is power in observing while others reveal themselves. Every joke my brother made, every laugh that followed, every uncomfortable glance around the table gave me information. I saw who enjoyed the spectacle, who tolerated it, and who felt uneasy but said nothing. Silence allowed me to read the room without adding fuel to the fire. It gave me clarity. In that stillness, I understood something important. If I spoke then, in the heat of the moment, my words would be dismissed as defensiveness. But if I waited, my words could become undeniable. Silence also protects dignity. When someone tries to provoke you publicly, they often want a reaction that confirms their narrative. Anger, tears, or desperation all serve as evidence that they've struck a nerve. By staying quiet, I denied my brother that satisfaction. He expected a response that would keep the spotlight on his humor and my discomfort. Instead, my calm unsettled him. He had nothing to play off of, no emotional feedback to feed his ego. Silence, in that moment, shifted the balance without anyone realizing it. Waiting to speak is not the same as never speaking. The difference lies in intention. My silence was temporary, strategic, and purposeful. I wasn't suppressing my truth, I was shaping it. As the evening continued, my thoughts became clearer, my emotions steadier. What began as hurt slowly transformed into resolve. I realized that when I finally spoke, it wouldn't be to defend my past or justify my choices. It would be to redefine how I allowed myself to be treated. When the time came for the toast, my earlier silence gave weight to my words. People listened because I hadn't my voice on small arguments or emotional outbursts. The contrast caught their attention. Silence had built anticipation without me trying to. It made my words feel deliberate rather than reactive. In that moment, the same silence that was once mistaken for weakness became the reason my voice carried authority. Silence doesn't erase pain, but it can transform it. When used wisely, it becomes a pause that gathers strength, a space where self-control turns into power. What others see as passivity can, in truth, be preparation. And when the right words finally arrive, they don't need to shout to be heard, they arrive fully formed, steady, and impossible to ignore. Truth has a different weight when it is spoken without anger. Anger is loud, fast, and often messy. It can feel powerful, but it gives people an easy excuse to dismiss what you're saying. They stop listening to the message and focus only on the emotion. I understood that if I wanted my words to matter at that table, they couldn't come from rage or bitterness. They had to come from clarity. Calm truth has a way of cutting through noise without raising its voice. When you speak calmly, you take away the other person's ability to control the narrative. They expect confrontation. They prepare for shouting, sarcasm, or tears. They are ready to defend themselves against emotion, not against honesty delivered with composure. That is why calmness unsettles people who rely on humiliation to feel powerful. It removes the drama they thrive on and replaces it with reflection they cannot escape. As I spoke during that toast, I didn't attack my brother directly. I didn't list his flaws or accuse him of cruelty. I spoke about patterns, about how words shape families, about how humor can either heal or harm. Every sentence was measured. That restraint forced the room to listen differently. People weren't choosing sides in an argument. They were being invited to recognize a truth they had been avoiding. Calm words leave space for understanding, and in that space, guilt and realization often appear on their own. There is also courage in choosing calmness. It takes far more strength to stay steady than to explode. Anyone can lash out when they're hurt, but it takes self-awareness to regulate emotion and still speak honestly. Calm truth shows confidence. It signals that you don't need volume or aggression to be taken seriously. You trust your words enough to let them stand on their own. Another power of calm truth is that it exposes insecurity without naming it. When someone humiliates others, it often comes from a need to feel superior. When you respond with anger, you confirm their sense of dominance, because they've provoked a reaction. But when you respond calmly, their behavior suddenly looks small. The contrast is undeniable. One person is composed and intentional, the other is revealed as impulsive and mean-spirited. You don't have to point it out. Everyone sees it. Calm truth also protects your integrity. Long after the moment passes, you don't have to regret what you said or how you said it. You don't replay the scene wishing you had chosen different words. Speaking calmly ensures that your message aligns with your values. It keeps you from becoming what hurt you in the first place. That alignment creates a quiet confidence that stays with you long after the room goes silent. When truth is delivered with control, it lands deeper. It doesn't shock people into silence. It invites them into it. They pause not because they are offended, but because they are thinking. Calm truth has a way of echoing after the conversation ends. People carry it with them, replaying it in their minds, questioning their actions and assumptions. That is a level impact anger can rarely achieve. In that moment, I learned that power doesn't always look like confrontation. Sometimes it looks like standing still, speaking clearly, and letting honesty do the work. Calm truth doesn't demand attention, it commands it. Self-respect changes the way people treat you, but even more importantly, it changes the way you experience yourself. For a long time, I believed that keeping peace meant tolerating disrespect, especially within family. I thought endurance was a virtue, that staying quiet and agreeable would eventually earn me understanding. What I didn't realize was that every time I allowed myself to be diminished, I was silently teaching others how much I was willing to accept. Respect doesn't begin with convincing others of your worth. It begins the moment you stop negotiating it. When I finally spoke during that New Year's toast, I wasn't asking for approval. I wasn't explaining myself or seeking validation. I was simply stating a boundary out loud. That shift was subtle, but powerful. Boundaries don't need ultimatums or anger to be effective. They need clarity and consistency. By speaking with self-respect, I redefined the space I occupied in that room. I didn't demand to be treated differently. I demonstrated that I already saw myself differently. People are remarkably perceptive when it comes to confidence. They may not always admit it, but they respond to how firmly you stand in your own value. Once self-respect is visible, it alters the dynamic. Mockery loses its entertainment value. Disrespect feels riskier. Those who once felt comfortable crossing lines begin to hesitate, unsure of where those lines now stand. Not everyone responds positively, but that reaction itself becomes revealing. Self-respect acts like a filter, showing you who is willing to adjust and who benefits from you staying small. The internal change is even more significant than the external one. When you act from self-respect, you stop carrying the weight of other people's opinions so heavily. You no longer replay conversations in your head, wishing you had spoken up or stood taller. There is peace in knowing you honored yourself in the moment. That peace is grounding. It strengthens your sense of identity and makes future situations easier to navigate, because you've already proven to yourself that you can show up fully. Self-respect also reshapes memory. Instead of remembering that dinner as another moment of humiliation, I remember it as a turning point. The same event that once symbolized embarrassment became evidence of growth. That reframing matters because it breaks old narratives. You stop seeing yourself as the person things happen to, and start seeing yourself as the person who responds with intention. That shift is subtle but life-changing. What surprised me most was how natural self-respect felt once I allowed it. I had feared that standing up for myself would create chaos or permanent distance. Instead, it created clarity. Some relationships adjusted. Some became quieter. Others, unexpectedly, became more respectful. Self-respect doesn't destroy connections, it reveals their true structure. It shows which bonds are built on mutual regard and which rely on imbalance. From that moment on, I understood that self-respect is not a one-time act, it's a practice. It's choosing honesty over comfort, boundaries over approval, and integrity over silence. Each time you honor yourself, you reinforce the message, not just to others but to yourself, that your voice matters. And once that belief takes root, the way you walk into rooms, conversations, and even conflicts changes permanently.